In 2026, the IRS lets you put $24,500 into a 401k. Vanguard's federal money market fund was showing a 3.59% 7-day SEC yield in early July, and people still keep selling early retirement like it comes from one magical side hustle. Cute. What actually works is much less cinematic. You stack cash flow until your bills stop needing your daily attention. So the real question is not, how do you find a magic passive income answer? The real question is, which income streams actually move you toward freedom, and which ones just keep you busy with a nicer story attached? That distinction matters. If you get it wrong, you can spend years building a pile of tiny jobs instead of a calm financial life. And the spreadsheet does not care about vibes. This video is your cleaner map. We are walking through all 12 income streams and earned, financial, and ownership buckets. Some of them are humble and wildly effective. Some look passive, but act like needy houseplants. And a favorite internet strategy is weaker than the fan club likes to admit. If you understand the order, you do not need to become a chaotic hustler. You need a stack that gets sturdier as you get older. Here is the frame I want you to keep in your head the whole time. Retirement is not really an age target. It is a cash flow condition. It is the month when the money arriving from work you already did, assets you already own, and systems you already built can cover the life you actually want. Not the fantasy life, your real life, your rent or mortgage, your food, your insurance, your travel, your margin. That is why order matters so much. Some streams buy freedom directly. Some streams mostly fund the streams that do. Start with the least glamorous stream on the list. Your main paycheck. Yes, that one. The salary, the hourly wage, the reliable direct deposit that social media likes to treat like an embarrassing starter pack. Early retirement usually begins there because predictability has real power. A dependable paycheck lets you automate investing, survive mistakes, and keep buying assets in ugly markets. It is not flashy. It is useful. Boring is a feature, and when you pair that paycheck with tax shelters, it gets teeth. Under the IRS limits for 2026, you can defer up to $24,500 into a 401k, and the IRA contribution limit is $7,500. That does not feel like an income stream in the romantic sense, but it absolutely increases the amount of future income your work can create. If your employer offers a match, that is even better. Take the free help and move on with your life. There is another reason the paycheck matters. A stable earned stream gives you emotional durability. When markets drop, a good paycheck lets you keep buying. When a side project stalls, a good paycheck keeps panic from taking the wheel. When a rental has a vacancy or a client disappears, the paycheck absorbs the insult. People chase exotic streams too early because ordinary income feels boring, but the boring stream is often the bridge that lets you take smarter risks everywhere else. You do not need to worship your job, you just need to use it as an engine instead of using it as an excuse. Next comes bonus, commission, overtime, and any other lumpy pay that drops into your account without becoming part of your monthly identity. This stream is powerful for one simple reason. Your lifestyle often has not already claimed it. Regular salary gets mentally spent before it arrives. Bonus money can still be told what to do. That makes it perfect for investing, killing bad debt, building a down payment fund, or buying runway for a better career move. People waste this stream because it feels optional. It is not optional. If you care about retiring early, it is acceleration. The trick is deciding where it goes before it lands. If you wait until the money is sitting there looking friendly, it tends to wander off into flights, gadgets, and noble little treats that somehow cost a lot when they gather in groups. Then there is freelance or consulting income. This is often the first stream that shows people they can separate earning power from their employer. It works because you already have the skill. Maybe you write, code, design, edit, sell, manage projects, or understand some weird software nobody else wants to learn. That is enough to start. Consulting has high margin because you are mostly selling expertise you already own. But let us keep our shoes on here. This is not passive. This is a job in loafers. You are still trading time and sometimes trading evenings for money. The reason it matters is not because it is forever. It matters because it can fund assets faster than your paycheck alone, and because it teaches you pricing, sales, client selection, and delivery. Those skills become very valuable if you ever want to build something bigger. That bigger thing is small business profit. For a lot of people, this is the stream that creates actual early retirement scale. Not because it is easy, it is not. Small business profit is messy, emotional, and occasionally rude. But it has one advantage the other streams do not. It can expand without your labor rising in a perfectly linear way. If you build systems, products, teams, or recurring revenue, the business can keep paying after you stop touching every task. That can mean an agency, a local service business, a niche e-commerce brand, a software product, a newsletter with paid access, a boring B2B service, or a tiny company that solves an unsexy problem very well. Own the machine, not just the shift. That is the whole game. The catch is that small business profit arrives last, not first. First, it pays you in confusion, then maybe in competence, then eventually in cash. And if that business becomes organized enough to run without you glued to every moving part, it can give you something even more valuable than monthly profit. It can give you transfer value. A stream that another person would buy is very different from a stream that disappears when you take a week off. That is part of why business ownership can be so powerful for early retirement. You may get the cash flow while you own it, and a liquidity event if you sell it well. But again, do not romanticize this. Businesses are not ATMs. They are living systems. Ignore them long enough and they will absolutely develop opinions. A quieter earned stream is equity compensation or profit sharing. If you work at the right company, this can turn ordinary employment into ownership. Restricted stock, options, employee stock purchase plans, and profit sharing can dramatically widen the gap between what you earn and what you keep building. But concentration risk is real. A great company can become a mediocre stock, and a beloved stock can become a very expensive lesson. So this stream only helps if you treat it like a wealth transfer, not a personality trait. Let the company pay you. Do not become the company in your own head. If the value rises, wonderful. If it becomes too large a slice of your net worth, trim it. Freedom hates concentration. Now we shift from earned streams to financial streams. This is where your money starts showing up to work without needing coffee first. The key thing to understand is that these streams trade upside for stability in different amounts. Some are cash parking spots, some are real income engines, some are mainly total return tools that happen to send you a little cash along the way. Knowing the difference keeps you from expecting rent money out of an asset that was really built for long-term growth. Cash interest is the first and simplest financial stream. Think money market funds, high-yield savings, and short treasury parking. In early July 2026, Vanguard's Federal Money Market Fund, VMFXX, was showing a 3.59% 7-day SEC yield. That is not life-changing, and it is not supposed to be. Cash interest is not there to retire you by itself. It is there to make the rest of your plan sturdier. It gives your emergency fund a pulse. It gives your opportunity cash something useful to do while you wait. It lowers the odds that a random expense forces you to sell long-term investments at a bad time. In other words, it buys optionality. And optionality is worth more than people think when life gets weird. This is also why short treasury bills and money market cash often belong in an early retirement plan, even when they are not the hero of the story. They reduce forced errors, they let you move deliberately instead of desperately. If the market gives you a sale, cash lets you buy. If your business has a dry spell, cash buys time. If your roof decides to audition for a disaster film, cash keeps your long-term assets intact. The internet tends to talk about cash like it is laziness. In real life, strategic liquidity is a competitive advantage. Bond interest is the next step up the ladder. You can do this with individual bonds or with funds. The broad, simple version is a bond index fund. In early July 2026, Vanguard's Total Bond Market ETF, BND, carried a 30-day SEC yield of 4.55%. That yield is more substantial than cash, but it comes with rate sensitivity and price movement. Bond income is not exciting dinner conversation, which is honestly another point in its favor. What bonds do well is support a portfolio that needs steadier spending power. They can cushion ugly equity stretches and give you something calmer to draw from. When stocks are misbehaving, if cash is your parking brake, bonds are closer to suspension. You still hit bumps, you just do not lose a tooth every time. Then we get to dividend stocks, and this is where the math gets rude. People love saying they want to live off dividends because it sounds elegant. No principle touched. Just checks arriving like a polite old movie. The problem is yield. As of June 30th, 2026, Vanguard's 500 index fund, Admiral Shares, VFIX, showed a yield of 1.02%. Wonderful fund, Thin Income, Vanguard's High Dividend Yield ETF, VYM, was at a 30-day SEC yield of 2.25% on that same date. Better? Yes. Magical? No. Dividend income is useful, especially for discipline and psychological comfort, but you do not get rich by worshiping yield alone. What matters is the total engine, growth, plus cash flow, plus taxes, plus risk. A stock does not become safe just because it hands you a bigger coupon. That does not mean dividend investing is bad. Far from it, it means dividend investing needs the right job description. If you want broad, durable wealth, a total market or broad index approach still does a lot of heavy lifting. If you want a slightly fatter income layer later, dividend-focused funds can help. The mistake is trying to skip the wealth-building phase and jump straight to living off yield before the asset base is ready. That is how people end up yield chasing, concentration loading, and buying companies that look generous right before they get awkward. REIT distributions sit in a similar neighborhood. But with a real estate flavor, public REITs can give you property exposure without tenants texting you about a leaking sink on a Sunday morning. That is a real quality of life benefit. They also tend to throw off more income than a broad stock index, which is why people use them as a cash flow layer, but they are still publicly traded equities. They still swing. Nareit reported that all equity REITs were up 14.9% year to date through June 2026. That is your reminder that a REIT income does not come wrapped in serenity. You are buying liquid real estate exposure with stock market behavior attached. Very useful, not magical. Notice what these financial streams are doing together. Cash gives you flexibility, bonds give you ballast, dividends and REITs give you some current cash, while still exposing you to market risk and long-term return potential. None of them alone is the whole answer for most people. Together, though, they can make a plan feel much less fragile. That matters because early retirement is not only about earning enough, it is about building a system you can actually stick with when headlines get loud and your nerves get expensive. The last group is ownership streams, and these are often the most misunderstood. Ownership streams can retire you early because the asset itself can keep producing after the initial effort. But almost all of them are front-loaded. They ask for time, capital, or attention before they become generous. If you only look at the finished version, you miss the years when the owner was building quietly with little applause and a lot of repetition. Rental real estate is the classic example. When it works, it can be beautiful. Tenants help pay down debt, rents can rise, the asset may appreciate, and the tax treatment can be helpful. When it does not work, it becomes a part-time operations job with legal paperwork and plumbing attached. The financing environment matters too. Freddie Mac's primary mortgage market survey said the average 30-year fixed rate was 6.43% on July 2nd, 2026. That matters because leverage changes everything in rentals. At that kind of rate, a mediocre deal gets exposed fast. So rental income is not about buying property because property feels adult. It is about buying a deal where the cash flow still makes sense after vacancy. Repairs, management, and your own patience are taken into account. Real estate can absolutely retire you early. It can also teach you that optimism is not underwriting. What makes rental income powerful is control. You can improve the asset, change management, raise rents within market reality, refinance later if the rate environment improves, or add value through better operations. But control cuts both ways. If you are disorganized, optimistic, conflict avoidant, or allergic to maintenance reserves, the property will eventually send you a memo. A rental is not just an investment, it is an operating business attached to a hard asset. Treat it that way. And it can be extraordinary. Treat it like mailbox money. And it will remind you quickly, digital product income is a different kind of ownership stream, a template, a course, a paid newsletter, a piece of software, a niche data product, a design kit, a research archive, a spreadsheet tool, a membership community, a little app that solves an annoying problem. The reason this stream matters is simple. The cost to make the initial version is high. The cost to sell the next copy is often low. That asymmetry is gold, but only if the product is specific enough to solve something real. Most digital products fail because they are vague, crowded. or built by somebody who wanted passive income more than they wanted to help a customer. You do not need a giant audience. You need a clear problem, a believable solution, and a way to keep improving the thing after people pay you. It is less glamorous than the gurus promised and much more effective. The final stream is royalty, licensing, and audience income. This is the broad family of assets that can keep paying because the work keeps getting consumed. Books, music, stock footage, photography, code libraries, educational content, podcasts, newsletter archives, even a YouTube catalog can live here. The reason this stream is attractive is that a back catalog can behave like a tiny digital employee. It keeps showing up after the workday ends. But the platforms take their cut. And the rules matter. Amazon KDP's pricing page, updated in April 2026, still centers ebook royalties around 35% and 70% options depending on pricing and territory. YouTube's monetization terms still use a standard 55% revenue share for long-form video, and Shorts creators receive 45% of allocated net ad revenue. Useful, yes. Infinite money machine? No. Platform income gets much better when it leads to something you own more directly, like products, subscriptions, sponsorship, control, or customer relationships off-platform. This is why the best audience businesses are usually not just audience businesses. The channel points to the newsletter points to the product builds the customer base. The customer base creates referrals, feedback, upsells, and maybe even licensing later. Each asset feeds the next. That is how a content library stops being a hobby with ad revenue and starts becoming a real ownership engine. The internet loves the viral moment. Wealth usually likes the library shelf. Now for the honesty beat, most of these streams are not passive when you start. Some are not passive ever. Some are just active income with better branding. And many people make the same mistake. They collect streams that all depend on the same economic mood. A commission-heavy day job, a freelance business serving the same industry, and rental properties in the same overheated city can look diversified on paper while behaving like the same local bet. Then there is tax drag, market risk, maintenance, burnout, and the boring little detail that early retirement in the United States still has a health insurance puzzle attached, so do not measure your plan by how many labels you can list. Measure it by resilience. Could this stack survive a weak job market? A bad quarter, a nasty repair, and a year when you are simply tired. That is the real test. It is also worth saying out loud that your expenses are part of the income story. If your lifestyle inflates every time a new stream appears, you have not built freedom. You have built a more complex treadmill. A paid-off ego is not the same thing as a paid-off life. The people who get free earlier are often suspicious of recurring costs, careful about upgrades, and very aware that every fixed bill they add requires more assets to support it later. Income matters, but the gap between income and lifestyle is where freedom actually sneaks in. Here's the twist. The people who retire early are often not the ones with the most streams. They are the ones with the cleanest stack. Usually that means a strong earned stream that builds capital fast, a liquid financial stream that adds stability, and an ownership stream that can scale beyond hours. Worked. Everything else is seasoning. This is why somebody with a good salary, a boring index habit, a sensible cash buffer, and a well-run side asset can quietly outrun someone juggling 10 chaotic projects. The spreadsheet does not care how entrepreneurial your calendar looks. It cares how much reliable cash or compounding your assets produce relative to your spending. Think of it like building a watershed, not collecting puddles. Your paycheck is the first channel. Your investments deepen it. Your ownership assets widen it. Over time, the water starts moving even when you are not standing in the river pushing it with your hands. That is when early retirement stops being a fantasy and starts becoming an engineering project. Calm, repetitive, almost a little boring from the outside, which is perfect because the best money systems usually look unimpressive right up until they buy back your time. If you want part 2, I'll map the best stack for your income, time, and risk tolerance.